Hello and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. Of course, I'm your host Clay, and with me, like always, is of course Katie. Katie, how you doing today?
Hi. I'm doing spectacular. I'm got my reading blanket out because I've got adrenaline coming off of our interview with Tom, which unfortunately was not live because of technical difficulties, but we're just getting
It's
some stuff
my
out.
fault. I want to go ahead and put that out there. I read so again, I was preparing for the interview by reading a whole bunch of Tom's Substack. I was reading some of Tales of Light and Life and editing a video and doing other things and so much stuff that I stayed up until 4 a.m. and uh I woke up to your conversation with Snell on Twitter, and I just saw him say, "Oh, Clay can change it later." I was like, "What?" And then I just turned off my phone and went back to sleep. I completely forgot about it when we were preparing to actually interview him, and so unfortunately, we would have just seamlessly stayed live to do this part of the episode, but now because of my mistake, I have to do more work and put them both together tonight when I edit everything, and it's gonna be so much fun. So much fun.
Better you than
Anyway,
me.
yes, of course. But either way, uh, y- uh, people who, of course, are listening to the actual episode on the podcast have no idea what we're talking about because it should be seamless, hopefully. But we just had the interview with Tom about, from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi. It was a very awesome conversation. Um, Tom has challenged myself and all those who are fans of Star Wars with a very, very fun challenge. Of course, your listeners already know what it is. I'm looking forward to actually trying out this challenge and hopefully having something uh probably by like the end of the week or if maybe in 2 weeks or so. But
Don't get distracted from Tales of Light and Life.
I am not. I have a schedule for the reading. I just hope that it doesn't, start at 4 a.m. in the morning. Anyway, of course, we usually start these episodes off with our opening crawl. Of course, our conversation about only murders in the building. But like Katie said, I'm a loser, and I did not watch the episode last night, and I did not watch the episode today. So we will be covering two episodes next week for that opening crawl. Um,
We
but
can call the opening crawl the interview.
Yeah, we can call the opening crawl of this episode the interview. It was a I think a hefty 40 something odd minutes. Really good interview. I'm really glad. I did mess up and I stole one of Katie's questions, but I gave
It's
her an
okay.
extra one just so that way it was even. But really fun interview. For those of you who are joining us here live, I do hope that you go back and watch and or listen to that when the video goes live. Anyway, we don't have much news, or any news at that matter. uh
I didn't really check because I knew we were doing the interview, so I didn't want the episode to go super long.
yeah, and
Uh,
I don't like, we usually catch almost everything. Like Katie, you were on the Star Wars side of TikTok on majority of your days on Twitter. So I really don't think we saw anything of huge importance. So we could get right into the review if you want to. That's up to you.
yeah. Well, okay, let me check the chat because I think I put something in the chat. Next week's episode for Ahsoka will be
Oh
42
yes,
minutes,
yes, I
and
did
this
see
was
that.
confirmed by the director, Peter Ramsey.
I am looking forward to that because today's episode, or this week's episode, felt really short. That does not mean that it was a bad episode, though. I wanna go ahead and put that out there. It was a very short episode, though. I think it was like 30 something odd minutes or 32, 38 minutes, something like that. It felt short. But it was a heavy action piece for this episode. Uh, so let's go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, and we actually did get the episode 5 runtime too, which is 50 minutes long. So that was late last week.
Oh, that's weird. So we got episode fives before we got episode fours.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's odd.
And the last like little piece of Star Wars news, if you go to starwars.com/eras, Star Wars has officially created basically a little timeline. Um Now, it does not have books or anything in it. It does not get that specific, but it's got all of the eras of Star Wars, and they have officially laid claim on Dawn of the Jedi and New Jedi Order. Um, so those are the two eras that are kind of, but they've got all so they've got the High Republic laid out kind of in the era. So they basically put the High Republic book series in the High Republic era, followed by the Young Jedi Adventures. Fall of the Jedi has Phantom Menace, Tales of the Jedi, Attack of the Clones, Clone Wars, and Revenge of the Sith. And I could go on, but you could just go to the website and go look for yourself. But yeah, so I think it's kind of cool that they're actually kind of putting the eras together and laying out the timeline. I think that's really important for them to continue to do.
I think so too. It sets a precedent for them to stay. Uh, uh, what's the right word? Uh,
On top of the timeline.
on top of the tie line, but it's what is that? I literally had the word at the tip of my tongue. Uh, accountable. Stay accountable to their own timeline, to their own canonical timeline, is what I was trying to say. So very, very cool indeed. But let's go ahead. Oh, you have one more
Last
thing?
thing, sorry. It also kind of gives them an like it puts a picture to where everything is. So like there's 8 items in Reign of the Empire and there's 5 in Age of Rebellion. And then of course 5 in like Rise of the New Order. So it kind of gives them an opportunity to go, okay, where do I have gaps in the timeline and where can I continue to fill in
Hmm.
information? I think that's something that will hopefully continue to be important to them to go, okay, we need to balance the timeline and not just throw everything into this one spot on the timeline.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. Um, let's move forward with the review of episode 3. I do not have the title of this episode. I don't know if you do.
So, yes, because I did a review last night on fullcirclecinema.com, so you can go read that. And again, just continue to support both Star Wars Alliance and my writing endeavors so people continue to say, hey, yeah, Katie can get this. Sam, just Sam. So the episode title for part 3 is Time to Fly.
All right. So, Time to Fly. Uh this was a great episode in my mind. Um one thing that we like to sound off on in our GUA chats whenever we are finished with an episode all of us are watching is I have seen and then the title of the show. Last night I put I have seen Hugh Yang featuring Ahsoka because this episode specifically I felt like really highlighted his humor, like his dry humor, the like the relationship that he has with both Ahsoka and with Sabine. Uh, quite possibly going to be my favorite character of this series.
Have you
Uh,
seen Doctor Who?
I have seen Doctor Who. Yes, David Tennant is
Okay.
amazing. He is the best 10th and 14th Doctor.
I'm so excited for those episodes. I'm so excited. I just had to make sure because like my one of my sisters has not seen it, and she was like, "I love Hu Yang," and I was like, "Have you seen Doctor Who?" And she's like, "No," and I was like, "You need to see Doctor Who because you just get the full David Tennant
I mean,
glory
he
right
had
there.
nearly the longest run of the Doctor, and then of course Matt Smith was like, "Ah, hold my beer," um, and he took that over. But yes, Hugh Yang is absolutely amazing in this. Um, Katie, where do you want to start off? Because there is uh of course we start exactly where we had left off here with the last episode. We know that Morgan has the this giant ring that you, I believe, had suggested was a hyperspace ring, and I was
Yes.
like, yeah, probably that totally makes sense. It has been confirmed here in this episode that it is a hyperforce ring, and
Hyperspace.
sorry, hyperspace ring. And the implication that I believe Ahsoka had made was, oh, is this ring large enough to jump to a neighboring galaxy? Let's go ahead and just start from there. I
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that's sort of towards the end of the episode. I still want to talk about the beginning, but we'll like hit this part. Um so Ahsoka does ask that question, and Yang confirms it, and he's like, I don't know for sure, but it seems like it because it's that big. He's never really seen um like a hyperspace ring that big, and obviously he's probably never been to another galaxy unless that's where he came from in the blue box. Just saying.
Possibly.
So
Mike Chin, you will. I don't know if you listen to our podcast, but if you want to confirm that or not, you could definitely do that. But also, one thing that I think um, Andrew in our last episode, he was joining us live. Both Andrew and David were both conversating, and I can't remember which one had said it. Um, but one of them had suggested that it was possible that the way they could track the uh the location
yes,
of
I think
Thrawn.
that was David.
I think it was
Um,
David. The idea of tracking the location of Thrawn was through the Purgles. And again,
that's
very
exactly what came up.
that's exactly what came up with Hewing's scan of the hyperspace ring.
Yeah, because he identifies it. So he identifies it as a hyperspace ring, and then he brings up the information with the multiple galaxies that in the Jedi archives there was records of multi-galaxy travel based on the migration path of Purgles, which we do in fact get live action Purgles in
They
this episode.
look great.
Yes.
I know that like in my mind I was really worried like how much were we really going to see, because again in the trailer when we actually do see a part of the Purgles, a part of my mind thought that like the tentacles were probably the only thing
Mhm.
that we were going to see, and it was supposed to be like this ominous like horrifying thing. Um but we actually saw Purgles from one
Multiple
end to the
Purgles.
other, multiple. It was like a whole herd, and I thought this was awesome. Or herd, school. I don't know what a pack of whales are, um, but it was awesome. I absolutely loved it. Really,
what
really
did you
cool.
think what did you think about the size difference? So, like, are the Purgles we saw in Rebels like kid Purgles, for instance? Because, like, you see Ezra on top of it, but then you look at, I'm assuming Ahsoka's ship is named Fulcrum. But if you look at the Fulcrum compared to the Purgles, those Purgles are huge compared to the ones we saw in Rebels.
The Purgles here on this episode looked about the size of a Star Destroyer, if
Yeah.
not larger. Um, I think it's really, really like because the way that they kind of made them seem in Rebels was that they really couldn't hit the atmosphere of a planet.
Yeah.
but here they were clearly in the atmosphere of a planet.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's exactly what I said to Matt last night. I was like, "Holy crap, they're in the middle of the atmosphere." Like, I was, like, shocked because they're in, like, the clouds. Like,
yeah,
everybody knows, okay, we have, like, the clouds and, like, planes can be above or below that part of the atmosphere, and, like, they're smack dab right in the middle of it. And they also are not as colorful as the Purgles and Rebels.
yes, these are much more grayscale, very like you said, the Purgles and Rebels, they were very blue. They had like a rainbow kind of tone to them whenever light shined on to them. I again, you look at the Purgles here, this is also a very dark planet, it looks like.
Mhm.
Very, very cloudy, not a whole lot of quote unquote sunlight. So that might be another reason why they are looking like
Yeah,
this.
and none of, like, the differences really bug me because I also know, like, okay, like, obviously, I think the ending episode of Rebels is a little bit different because we don't really get, like, a close perspective of the Purgles other than, like, to the Chimera. But, like, I'm talking about, like, the episode in Rebels where, like, they're feeding on, like, the unrefined gas particles, Clausian 19, 47, so I can't remember the number. But, like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm just kind of, like, wondering, like, if we're going to get, like, the hierarchy of Purgles. I don't know. These are the things that haunt me.
I I would be very interested to see if we see different variations of Purgles. Because they're not very well known.
Yeah.
Like Sabine specifically says in this episode, I haven't seen those creatures since the day Ezra left,
Mhm.
or the day Ezra was gone, or whatever. Um, so they're not very uh social, should I say? Um,
Yeah.
but I also think that creatures of that size have probably interacted with sentient beings. And one thing that pissed me off in the middle of the Purgles, they were having a firefight, and I'm like, if they shoot these Purgles, I'm gonna be so pissed. And
You're gonna call Star Wars PETA?
you saw blaster fire, and like surprisingly, none of them really hit a tentacle or like shot a Purgle in the face or anything. But I wasn't worried for Ahsoka or Sabine. I was more worried for the Purgles. I was like, don't kill the Purgles, save the whales. Um, I it I was like, what is wrong with you guys? Like, for real, not cool. Uh
Merrick, at least, is a dark sider, so he does not care. We don't
oh,
know what Shin is yet.
but also, it's not pronounced Merrick. In the show, they pronounced it Maroc.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
They
That's true.
pronounced it Maroc. So I was like, oh, very, very interesting. Which, by the way, Snell put something in the GUA chat today that would be a very, let's say, not very popular reveal of who Maroc is.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Cal. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
That was Chris, not Snell.
Oh, was it Chris? I thought it was Snell. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's I guess a new fan theory, because there is a costume that you can wear in both uh in both Cal Kestis games. You can wear a Inquisitor outfit. And so they're like, "Oh, maybe he's the Inquisitor in Ahsoka."
So the theory I saw today about who Maroc could be is the eighth brother because he fell to his supposed death on Malachor. But what if he mysteriously found a world between worlds portal and was saved? The visor is like pretty close to what he was wearing. Like he had like more of a helmet on,
Mhm.
but the visor looks the same.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And we do know, and this is where like the Sam Witwer theory comes into play. Because Sam Witwer was in the credits for episodes 1 and 2 last week. I don't know if he was this week, but Paul Darnell is only playing the physical role of
Hmm.
Marok. So who's voicing
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But uh, going back to the beginning of the episode, like you said, you wanted to, we see Sabine and Ahsoka, as well as Huyang, doing some training. We see Sabine practicing her ready stance, her and some other different stances. I love the way that they are practicing because Huyang has these like little sensors that
it?
look like
Yes.
lightsabers themselves, but it basically tracks the right positions for each uh, uh, form that Huyang
Yes.
is yelling out. Those are the different lightsaber forms, and she is supposed to be striking in that form. And then those bars that he's using lights up to show the correct positions and which ones she missed. And I thought it was a very cool representation of how it all works when it comes to training with QA. And it did remind us in the previously on, and then it's a part of this discussion here that Sabine tells Ahsoka. She's like, "Well, Huyang told me that I'm the worst Jedi ever, and that I could never become a Jedi if I was, back then." And she's like, "Wait, did you actually say that?" And he was like, "Yeah, I did because it's true." Just like, holy crap!
And
I
it's
love how straightforward Huyang is. I really do.
and he like he's lived 25,000 years at this point. Like what's a man gonna do? Like he's literally seen and done it all. Like he deserves to be honest as an old man, an old droid, excuse me. Um, but it's just kind of funny because you look at episode 2 and he's like, so when you gonna get Sabine back in the band? Like is Sabine ever coming back? She needs to. And
That's
then he's
true. Like
over here telling
he's like
Sabine
poking the
like
bear to be like, "Come on, do it, do it, do it." And then she's back, and he's like, "You're such an idiot." Like, it's very odd to read him, but I love his personality. I really, really do. Um,
And if you don't believe that this is his personality, y'all, please go back to season 5, episodes 7 through 10 to get uh Hu Yang's episodes, and you will see this is like always been his
this is
personality.
with all the kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great episodes. Um,
I
but I
love the training sequence. I
mhm.
think this is so needed, and I know people want to get into Balin and Shen, uh, and like who they are, what they're supposed to be, um, and like getting to Thrawn. We were both wrong on when Thrawn was going to make an appearance in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
But like I think this episode was fully needed to get Sabine and Ahsoka on the same page, but also put the confidence of the viewer that Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship is actually a thing. Like they fell back into what feels like, oh, okay, they're familiar with each other, they know each other's routines, kind of thing. Like it just everything flowed so well, and Steph Green directed this episode and she did an incredible job with it. I love also that they continued to honor the Japanese elements George Lucas pulled originally for Star Wars. The little wooden saber that Sabine is using and that Ahsoka ends up using as well is actually like the name is the Bakken saber is actually a Japanese training sword, like
Mhm.
full on. So
Yeah.
I love that.
The really cool thing about this is it brings up a conversation of that Sabine is very aware of. She is not force sensitive. Uh and it really draws back to the conversation that
Mhm.
that Kanan was
Kanan
having with Hera. The
and
idea that everything anyone and everyone has the force. she is and that she is blocked. You need to remember that from Rebels. Um,
Yeah.
Again, you don't need to remember it, but those of us who have seen Rebels have the context, and
Well,
it just helps you.
even if you've only seen the movies, Qui-Gon Jinn in The Phantom Menace brings it up to Anakin when he does the blood test on Anakin. He's looking for midichlorians. Midichlorians reside in everyone, but they're an indication of how much of a connection you can pull with the Force. Basically, how much talent you have in order to connect with the Force. And I really just love that that's a continuing theme because it puts everybody on not necessarily the same playing field, but it goes back to that um I can't think of the word. I can't think of the word. But it's like it just like if people are like being jealous of a Jedi, well, it's just kind of they don't have to be as discipled as you. It's like it's very much a sports metaphor. Like my sister was always way more talented with softball than I ever was. I put twice as much work into her and still was never as good. But I still had the capability to play softball.
Mhm.
Like that kind of thing. That's not what I was intending for originally. It made it work.
But also, um, I want to double down on a counterpoint that you were bringing up in the earlier episodes.
Okay.
You had said that Sabine, and of course her being Mandalorian, could possibly be the indication that she doesn't need to have the telekinesis and she could still be a Jedi. I think that if people were paying attention, Lucasfilm has already shown us Sabine using the Force.
Ooh, really?
Yes, and it wasn't technically showing us. They didn't show it to the entire world. The entire world got it from a leaked video from
Oh,
Star Wars.
the cup
The cup,
jiggling. Hmm.
the cup, because the cup is very important to this episode.
And everyone thought in that trailer that it was
It was
Jason.
Jason. Yes, everybody thought it was Jason. Yes. Which we actually see a live action Jason Syndulla
Yep.
here in this episode. Looks a little different. Um, I feel like in the show he looked a little bit more alien.
Yeah,
Uh,
he had the combination look, which I appreciated.
yeah. Uh, but I I think for sure, because the thing is, after this whole training sequence, which by the way, like the whole thing about like try to sense me where I'm at and everything, love that entire sequence because at
Yeah.
some point, like Sabine was getting it, and then she got frustrated and was letting
Yep.
her anger kind of guide her rather than trying to focus. Really love that scene.
Yeah.
But
And like the whole training scene, it again, it's not heartwarming. It's not there's like some funny moments, but it's not like Sabine is getting this. Like you said, there's flashes of inspiration for Sabine where she does get it, but she doesn't realize she got it. And Ahsoka's because she doesn't have the visor on, realizes, okay, Sabine is getting it. She just has to get it consistently.
mhm,
It's not a heartwarming scene, but it is continuing to build the relationship up.
yeah. There is a moment where at the end of the training sequence, they're sitting down at the table and they have the conversation about the Force.
Mhm.
And this is where Ahsoka goes into the cockpit, and Sabine is sitting there with both cups, and she puts her hand up, and she just focuses and focuses and focuses. And I don't know if a lot of people thought it was going to move. I thought it would be a little too easy if it like maybe jiggled a little bit. I was like, she's not ready. She's definitely not ready. I don't think it's gonna happen. But as soon as I made that thought in my head, it reminded me of the leaked footage trailer.
Yep.
And I was like, it's gonna be her. She's gonna do it. And you had said that there, and I didn't see it in the trailer when I first saw it. So I need to go back and double check. But you had seen in either a TV spot or another trailer, there's a moment where she is fighting
Shin.
Shin, and she puts her hand up like she's about to use the Force.
Mhm.
So I think they're teasing it, and I think it's going to happen eventually. But I don't
And
think it's going to happen for a majority of the season.
I think it would have been cool at like I say cool, but like in Star Wars, I don't know if this would ever be a thing, but like if she walked away and then the cup just like slightly moved, like just
I
to
thought
kind of
about that as well.
continue to
Um,
hint.
but like for me, I don't think it would make much sense because our focus wouldn't even be on the cup at that point, you know?
Yeah, and that's where I was like, I don't know if this makes sense in Star Wars, but like I wanted it to happen just to like tease it and like, hey, you can actually do this kind of way.
I think we will get more hints or we will see her potential for it more and more for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but speaking of Jason Sindula, Hera has a very hostile conversation with some senators and
Yes.
Mon Mothma. And we
And
get the live action version of a character that we've never seen in animation before.
so I don't think you phrased that quite right because we have seen Senator Giona in animation.
No,
Um,
we have? Where?
so you have never watched this show, but
Re-
it is
I
entitled Star Wars Resistance.
the, have you seen Resistance?
Yes, I actually did.
Oh, I thought you hadn't seen Resistance. That's why I said that. Um, no, I have not seen Resistance. I knew
Oh,
that he
okay.
came from Resistance, but I'd never seen it. Um, but when I saw how much of a dick this dude was, I was like, is he a dick in the show? Because this is like a Disney Channel show, if not like a Disney kids show. Like,
um, so I only ever saw Rebels once, or Resistance once. I think he makes like 3 or 4 appearances, but they're very brief because he's the father of the main character.
okay.
So, in that case, like he kind of gets involved. I don't remember him being a dick, but also you got to think like Resistance takes place Resistance takes place 25, 30 years after this. So he's had time to change and like realign his thoughts. But Jordan Mason put this on Twitter today, and he was like, I did not think we were going to get the new Borsk's Phalia in Star Wars canon like this.
Oh, failure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I loved that comparison because like you feel it, and especially with what you know in Heir to the Empire, because like we talked about it, like Borsk, Phalia, and the Bathans didn't get involved until they saw that the rebellion could actually win.
Hmm.
And this is
That is
exactly
so
what Hera
true.
puts up.
That is so true. I like that connection now that you've pointed it out. I like that comparison. Um, as long as long as if he decides to be a traitor to the entire rebellion or New Republic, whatever you want to call them, uh, I do not need them to welcome him back in with open arms. He needs to be kicked
I
to the
don't
curb.
I don't think he'll end up being a traitor because he's still a senator in Resistance. Spoiler alert. So,
Is this oh,
but
I
hey,
guess this takes place before Resistance.
yes, because Resistance is a sequel trilogy show.
Yes, it is, because I'm pretty sure BB-8 is a part of that show, right? Isn't that the big
BB-8, Phasma, and Poe Dameron. And
Yeah.
you can actually see, I think it's called the Colossus, in Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. So, yeah, this I did not like this dude whatsoever in this conversation. And like Hera like she threw on the sass. Uh
Yes.
like like the moment she was like, "Oh, where were you during the war? Oh, you were just waiting to see who won?" to take sides. Okay, cool. Yeah. I was like,
The woman is great.
"Oh, snap." Yeah, she does not like him as well, clearly. But this big moment was her telling them that she believes Thrawn is coming back, and uh she has seen him in action. And if he at all has any sort of power, she knows that he will use it to its fullest, and there will be another war. And so
Mhm.
she is trying to prevent that war. And they're just like, well, uh, if I don't see a duck, it's not a duck. Basically, is what they said, and they're not going to help her out. And this is when start the
Well, they
firefight.
also
Oh, go
they
ahead.
also accuse her of specifically trying to use the New Republic for another
Yes.
mission to go after Ezra. And I find that super interesting, and I do have to wonder if maybe there will be some sort of prequel material that kind of goes over Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship, but also the little missions where Ahsoka has maybe said, "Oh, maybe Ezra's here. Like, let's go try and find
Well,
him."
I don't think it would be Ahsoka. I think it would be Hera. Um,
No, it would be Hera, but, like, Ahsoka and Sabine are specifically, like, kind
oh,
of the
going
ones
out to to the missions. That would be
and building
interesting.
that, like, initial Padawan master relationship
Oh,
that we know
maybe.
they've had.
Actually, yeah. That makes sense. Um, but Hera gets defensive of that too,
Mhm.
because the senator, he's like, "Oh, well, it seems you've used this kind of thing before to go on your hypothetical rescue of this Ezra Bridger,"
Yeah.
and uh, they were like, "Yeah, he's dead," and she barked back, "You don't know that." Like you have no evidence of that. So it is a very touchy subject. You need to remember they weren't just a crew; they were family. And I love after this whole thing where Jason comes out and he's like, "Oh, Sabine's gonna be a Jedi," and she's like, "Where'd you hear that from?" "Oh, Chopper." What? Me? What are you talking about? Like, and Chopper was like, "I didn't do anything." Uh, but I
I
love
love
the
Nanny Chopper.
I love the eagerness in Jason's voice of I want to be a Jedi too. Like it's just like
Yeah. I
ugh.
love the actor they got for him. I've seen him in he's, like, made, like, small appearances in, like, one of the medical dramas I watch, and he was really
Mhm.
good in that, so I think he's a super good choice. And he is actually in the main credits for the episode. He's not in the ending credits. Same with Genevieve O'Reilly. Genevieve O'Reilly was in the main credits and not as, um, like, a guest person, so
Very, very cool. But we do get to the firefight. They, when I say they, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Huyang exit out of hyperspace. They see the planet, and they have a reading of what will be known, of course, as the hyperspace ring that is on the other side of the planet. And so they're wanting to get closer. They sit back for a little bit, but of course, this is when Shin, Marok, and other fighters
okay,
come
we gotta talk
around.
about the other fighters. We gotta
Mhm.
get this out of the way. And I know, I'm sorry, I'm excited. But what if they're chiss? What
So
if
I saw how excited you were on Twitter, throwing this theory out there. Um, you go ahead and throw this theory out there because you know more about the Chiss than I do. I still haven't really read much about them, any of the legend stuff. So you go ahead and you fire off.
okay, so, my theory is, because we see so Shin comes out with Marok in basically a squadron of 6 ships, and the other 4 fighters are piloted by an alien species. We don't get a name, they're speaking an alien language. My thought process is because Morgan has apparently worked so close with Thrawn, is that she had Chiss connections. And so in super secret missions, she basically pulls in, especially when they're getting this close to Thrawn, because Hu Yang tells us they're putting the final hyperspace engine into the hyperspace ring. So like it's they're on the last legs of kind of like the before the journey portion. So on these like secret missions, I'm thinking that maybe she's able to contact the Chiss Ascendancy and get people to help locate Thrawn and basically add bodies to her fight. And the reason I think this is because we don't see any skin on these people. And we all know how the Empire feels about alien species. Despite the fact that she's using them for bodies, they're like fully masked. Like,
Hmm.
why would you be fully masked and like gloves and everything if like you weren't trying to hide something?
I like the theory, but it could easily be as simple as this is their suit. This is just now it's very convenient that every single one of them is fully covered because you could easily just say, okay, well, why doesn't Shin have a spacesuit like that?
Yeah. Because
But
even on the planet, like they're fully covered.
mhm, yeah.
It's not just in the fight. So, like, for me, I think this is potentially like something, especially considering Filoni and Favreau both consulted with Timothy Zahn to make under the impression that they were trying to get Thrawn right. What if they
Hmm.
also wanted to pull in more details about the Chiss Ascendancy?
I could see it happening. I will not be surprised if they do end up being Chiss. Just because you have so much more knowledge than I do about them. Uh, I would really enjoy that. I think it would be like an aha moment for a lot of people who know Rebels but don't know Thrawn's legacy within the Legends books and all of his trilogy and everything. I think it would
Yeah,
be like, holy crap, there's more of his people type of thing. Um,
yeah.
which I think would make for a cool moment. Depending on how they do the reveal. Um, so I'm in it for the theory, but I think there has to be a little bit more build up for that as well. You know.
I have to wonder, especially because Balin at the end of the episode sends like the fighters off to like go hunt for Ahsoka and Sabine. I
Hmm.
have to wonder if a lightsaber strike here or there is going to reveal something.
I could see that happening. Yeah. Um, yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Actually. Um, but in this firefight, um, I wonder, Katie, uh, if there is going to be any man babies out there saying, "Why is Ahsoka deflecting battleship blaster fire? Nobody can do that." When just this year we read a book that had a Padawan doing the exact same thing.
And like, and those man babies, they're going to have seen Star Wars Clone Wars, where Anakin does something very similar. The scene is not identical, but it feels so much like the Clone Wars moment right there. It's
Hmm.
so awesome. And
Love this blue suit, by the way, that Ahsoka is wearing.
yeah, it looks like a New Republic spacesuit. So like the uniforms that we see kind of on the ship. You can see it in the background when Hera's talking to the New Republic Council. It looks like that. But somebody on Twitter was like, I want to see how Ahsoka put that on her head so quickly. Because the spacesuit covers her Leku and everything, and you're just like, how much time did you have?
She it's one of those mechanisms where you kind of just like slip through, like it's already open. Like it's not
Yeah.
like she has to unfold it and everything. It's already just like hanging on hooks, and she just like kind of dives into it and like
Well, no,
boom, there you go.
if you look at it, the back Leku, it completely flaps. It's not tucked into the spacesuit.
Really?
It's like, yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. That's interesting. I'll have to go back and watch that. But
Um,
well, go ahead. Go ahead.
so the dog fight was probably my least favorite part of the episode. I just think it could have been done maybe a little cleaner. Everything looks fantastic, but I think I think the biggest thing for me is I am not digging Shin's character. I really like Balin. I think Ray Stevenson has given him a lot of character, but we're getting a lot of Shin, and we have given her no personality whatsoever.
I think, unfortunately, I think Shin is getting the uh, silent edge lord, like I want to be a badass, but I like also don't know how to control my emotions type of character. Um, what a lot of people thought Anakin was in uh Clone Wars and Attack of the Clones and of course Revenge of the Sith. There was a lot of people who hated the uh of course the portrayal of Hayden Christensen with Anakin Skywalker, and they were like, "Oh, he's whining too much. This is blah 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 blah." Blah." I think unfortunately um Shin is kind of going to be that exact same character, um, in a sense of like she talked to the way she talked to Morgan. Oh,
Mhm.
look at that! You almost got them. I'll finish them off. You know,
Right,
like
but I think it's, like, where we don't know the exact definition of who Balin and Shin are. They are clearly using orange lightsabers. You can see the difference in Marok's, uh, helicopter lightsaber versus their lightsabers.
mhm.
And it's just kind of like, okay, are y is she going to at some point tap into rage? Because like, there's no emotion with that, which kinda leads me more to, like, a Jedi philosophy with them, but also, like, they're clearly not Jedi. Balin physically says that in the first episode. "You were right on one thing, we're not Jedi."
Mhm.
So, how are they greeting the Force, I guess? Once we kind of get that answer, I think I will start to understand Shin more and appreciate her as a character. I just am like, "Okay, I need to see some sort of leaning."
How many episodes are we getting?
8.
8. We're 3 episodes down. We have 5 more
Mhm.
to go. I think we only have 1 episode, if any at all, that shows the background of Balin and Shin.
And I think that's going to be the next episode. It's going to be the fight between Balin and Ahsoka, which kind of tells that story. It's gotta be.
You think so?
I really think so because Ahsoka knows Balin was a Jedi. So she is going to try and figure out what happened. Why is he partnering with Morgan and doing all of these things? Because she cares about people being on the right side of the Force. She may not care that he's not a Jedi, but she wants people on the right side of history.
So you think the Shin Sabine fight is going to be happening at the exact same time as the Balin Ahsoka fight?
I think so because you see we don't necessarily see the Shin Sabine fight surroundings, but it feels
A
like the
forest.
ground around Sabine it yeah, it feels like they're in the midst of the forest. We also see Marok and Ahsoka fight again, and that's in the forest. And we know for a fact Ahsoka and Balin's fight is at the little altar thing at the edge
Yeah.
of the forest. So to progress the story, it needs to happen next episode, I think.
I'm trying to figure out where they could put a flashback episode without it feeling like a full stop. Um, and I don't think I'm gonna get that. I think it's going to feel like a full stop. Um, with Obi-Wan Kenobi, we had the episode go back and forth with a flashback. Or actually, no, it opened with the
Yeah,
flashback, and the rest was in quote unquote present time of that show.
and the only thing I can think of for there to be a flashback, and I hate this, I really do hate this, but it's the Tales of the Jedi episode with the practice makes perfect, and that's where the voiceover's coming from
I
in
was
the
just about
trailer.
to say I think that might be I think it's a cold open,
It's
that
cold open.
flashback scene. Yeah.
And they did a cold open technically this episode
Yeah.
too. So it's something that they've kind of taken use of. So
I think that could definitely happen for sure. Um, but that is basically the episode. We've kind of talked about everything. I'm trying to think if there was anything specific.
I
Um,
think I think the last part was kind of Ahsoka opening up to Sabine because
oh, in the
Hugh
firefight.
Yang, yeah, Hugh Yang kind of calls her out on it and is like, "You two are not interacting like a master and apprentice," and like, my friend Christian talked about it, but like, Hu Yang talks about like, "Oh yeah, well, you come from a line of very odd master and apprentice relationships," and that kind of triggers Ahsoka to be like, "Sabine, what do you need?" Because Sabine, and this is the other thing about the firefight that I really didn't like was Sabine does not forget how to fire like in the gun. Like and it felt like
I
she was kind of off her game.
I don't think that it was necessarily that she was off her game. You need to remember when you look at Rebels, you saw the entire crew going into the fight. You
Mhm.
saw uh Zeb and Sabine manning the guns, or you saw Ezra and Sabine manning the guns. While Zeb was working on something within the ship to help with the shields, and it was all one cohesive unit. Whereas Ahsoka was just flying the ship, and Sabine was trying to get the right angle it's a symbiotic relationship with those ships. The only
Yeah.
way you can get a perfect angle with that gun is if the fulcrum tilts or turns and whatever. Like if the fulcrum turns and Sabine is trying to shoot somebody at a particular angle, she may not get it just because Ahsoka is flying kind of crazily. So there needs to be a communication between the pilot and the gun. And I think that's what they were trying to insinuate. Like, hey, we need to work together to better work out this fight that we're having. Not
That
necessarily
makes
that
sense.
Sabine was, off of her game. I think she was doing just fine, but it was for the fact that her pilot wasn't really
Helping her out.
necessarily all focused on the fight, whereas she was just trying to survive.
Yeah. That makes sense and that does change my perspective. So, good job.
Yeah,
Way to
yeah.
go.
Uh grandfather was Air Force, so I kind of I know how all of that stuff works. But the in that same fight, we saw uh Morgan have giant laser cannons attached to this hyperspace ring, and it it nearly got me. It nearly got me because He Yang's like scanning, 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 complete, and then you just see sparks flying, and I was like, Huey! Like I didn't care about Ahsoka, I didn't care about Sabine. I was just like, Ewing, no. And then like
I
he was out for like the majority of the later end of that fight, and I love how like Sabine's like the one time I could use your advice. Like, are you serious? Like you're out. Uh but he of course woke up. It was for the fact that he like in his protocol, it's like he shuts down reserve power or whatever it was. Uh
yeah,
so
I
it
didn't
had a
really
good
get
laugh
that.
at me.
I didn't really get that. Like I know it was like for like the plot and everything, but I was like, why did he power down? Was he like maybe like a chopper and he was like plugged into the fulcrum trying to get the scan kind of thing? Because I was like, why does he need to be plugged in
I
to use the technology?
I mean, you could easily headcanon again, 2,500 years old, and
75% original parts.
75% original parts, but those are old parts. So, maybe he just needs an extra oomph of power whenever he works now, and he always needs to be plugged in.
Maybe.
Maybe.
That does make sense.
But that's all I got. Is there anything else that you can think of within the episode that we haven't brought up yet?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything. It's a packed episode. Like there is no break whatsoever in this to like breathe. Like the whole thing is stuffed, basically. Which
Mhm.
is a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But like for 36 minutes, the dude was packed.
Yeah. I really, really enjoyed that. I in for somebody who has a very short attention span due to my ADHD, I need that. I need something to keep my attention. And
Mhm.
if it just keeps going boom, 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 I'm going to get that. The one thing I will say, and I think I saw, was it Zach on Twitter or was it Chris? I can't remember who it was. They're like, my only complaint is that I want more. Like it ended too fast. And
A lot
for
of people on Twitter were saying that.
and for me, um, I did want maybe a little bit more from Balin, but I know I'm going to get more, so I can be patient and wait for those scenes with him.
Yeah.
So,
And, just, like, as a note on, like, when the episode's releasing, I appreciate this episode releasing at 9 p.m. so much because, like, I'm actually interacting with people on Twitter versus waking up early on Wednesday morning at 5 a.m. I don't feel like getting on Twitter after that. But you know what? At 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, I could physically interact with people on Twitter and, like, throw back theories and stuff. Like, I know everybody can't watch it at the same time every day, but, like, I have missed that because I used to watch the CW live, and
yeah,
that was so
it's
much
it's
fun.
it's a great time for people to drop episodes.
Mhm.
I remember when like Netflix had a very sporadic upload and release schedule, and like the first
Yeah.
season of Daredevil uploaded at like 4 or 5 a.m. And I thought it was gonna be 2 a.m. So I stayed up and I just stayed up and I stayed up and stayed up until it finally showed up after refreshing. And I was like, oh, gotta start watching it now. And it was horrible. Um, but it's great. Even the guys over at the Geek First podcast, they're able to do the review immediately after the episode. And they used to do that
Yep.
on midnight releases, but for them, uh, midnight is 2 a.m. my time. And then they're finished with the episode closer to 1, and then they're having to stay up until 2 or 2:30. It's absolutely nuts for them.
Yeah.
Dropping at 9, finishing the episode within an hour, these guys on their coast, it's not even 8 o'clock yet by the time they're starting
Mhm.
their podcast, and I appreciate that for some people. It
Yeah.
it gets people excited for not only the content that they're watching, but the discussion afterward. It's the discussion that they're able to have with everybody else, and I think that is so important when it comes to stuff like this because it gets the word of mouth out there. Because you're right. A lot of people, if it drops at 2 a.m., a lot of people aren't like us. They're not going to wake up and that's the first thing they do. They have
Yep.
to get ready for work. They have to get their kids ready for school. They have to go to work and do all this stuff. And they might be able to watch half the episode during their lunch break and then have to finish the rest when they get home. So they can't talk about the episode throughout the day until they finish it, 24 hours after its release. Now, at least they have the opportunity to watch it at the same time as everybody else. And I think that is perfect. And they need to start doing that more along every platform.
Yep. And now, again, I forgot to talk about this at the beginning, but I've been wanting to make sure that we include this. Y'all, I know a lot of podcasts are not talking about the show right now, and that is completely a decision made for them. But ultimately, we're all in support of SAG-AFTRA and the WGA getting the correct deal they need from the AMTP. AMPTP. We would not have this show without their hard work, and that's truly important to highlight. So just make sure that you're staying on top of things. Make sure if you see a news release, the WGA has been awesome about updating their website to make sure everybody's getting the correct information. So please make sure you're supporting your writers and your actors, okay, y'all?
Yes. I just saw one of the TikTok influencers that I watched that was very big into Star Wars content. He has shifted his content specifically because of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA, and I do not blame him whatsoever. He will have his time to talk about this show, and I want to respect everybody else who makes that decision. Currently, with what we have and our decisions, we want to go ahead and talk about this show because we know that we are able to do that without disrespecting those that are in the WGA and SAG-AFTRA. We have let people know where we stand with SAG-AFTRA and the WGA, and I know that a majority of you guys wouldn't absolutely love the fact that if me and Katie just talked about books every single episode. So we have to talk about something. But I do know that there is a lovely quarter of you guys that do enjoy our book reviews. So we do thank you for that for sure. Um, but just a reminder, as we are signing off here, there is an interview out there
Well, we're not
for.
signing off yet. We got to talk about book club.
Oh, we do have to talk about book club. Let me get.
Speaking of book reviews, let's talk about from a certain point of view returns Return of the Jedi uh stories 11 through 15.
Yes.
There's your transition, Clay. Merry Christmas.
So let's go ahead and take a look at that. The first story, you said 11 through 15.
Yes.
So
So the first one is the Sarlacc story by
yes,
Charlie Jane Anders. Um and this one is entitled My Mouth Never Closes.
this I said this in our review. For those of you who have not listened to our review yet, it is dropping the exact same day as this episode. If you are just listening to our podcast, go check out that review of From a Certain Point of View, Return of the Jedi. This was in one of my this was in my top 5 stories. Um, when it comes to these characters and the events that happen throughout each movie, uh, you think, okay, there are important characters and there's not so important characters. And the Sarlacc pit, you're just looking and you're like, okay, it it's a big plot device, you know.
Mhm.
It's a big gaping hole in the sand. It's you can't miss it. Um, but to find out the history of this uh somewhat peaceful creature actually is
Vegetarian peaceful creature.
vegetarian peaceful creature is absolutely hilarious. um we said this in our review that the way they interpreted their own sign language is really really cool. um and also really hilarious to think about when you just think that this pit is absolutely terrifying and scary looking, and all he's trying to say is hello and he's just kind of waving and whatnot. uh but I really dug this story. Learning that there was a school of uh Sarlaccs, and that the uh that Tatooine was once a jungle planet, uh, I thought was even cooler. They're like,
Yeah,
it brings a whole lot of more mythos into the universe of the Star Wars galaxy. So I thought that was
for
really
sure.
really cool.
Yeah, this one took me by complete surprise, and I don't know why it did, because the creature stories from a certain point of view and from a certain point of view strikes back shocked the ever loving crap out of me. Like I absolutely love them. And this one is a hoot. Charlie Jane Anders did an incredible job with this. Um just making everything kind of funny in a sense, but also like sarcastic. Like I was also not expecting like the tentacle weaving to be sign language. Like I think that's freaking awesome. But also just the fact that vegetarian Sarlacc did not expect at all. Like could not have dreamed of that. And it just fits so well. I loved it. This was in my honorable mentions.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very cool story here. The next story is uh Kernels and Husks. Uh I'm trying to remember this story in particular.
This one
Um
is by Jason Fry and it's about Sim Alu. And
yes.
Sim Alu um was an advisor to Darth Sidious. So when you this is kind of um in that presentation when Darth Sidious comes off, he is one of the people following Darth Sidious onto the Death Star. So
Wait,
this is that group of 5.
is this that terrifying story about the farmers
Yep.
and the corn husks and throwing him overboard and everything?
Yep.
This this is literally my worst nightmare come to life. Um so and it's actually I've seen it happen. Of course, this isn't like really seen it happen, but they actually showed this in Smallville for an episode. Uh
Yes, I remember that episode.
yes, Martha Kent gets almost crushed by
Yes.
corn. Um this is real. People can actually be crushed by small objects in mounds. Same thing with sand and all sorts of dirt. It's a real thing, people. But this reading this again at the god awful hour of 2 in the morning, um and the horrified look on my face as I'm reading the events, the fact that he is this individual is like, "Oh, come with me. I want to show you something." Like, "Oh, like I are you sure you don't want to help out with this aid?" And like, "Oh, like wait, you're wanting to replace all of us with droids?" Like, "Wait, let me show you something real quick." Like this was methodical, it was evil, it was terrifying. This story was nuts.
Yes. Um, I really enjoyed how this kind of dove into the Clone Wars time and kind of still tracking everything that's going on in Return of the Jedi. That Clone Wars treachery and the droid hate. It's just a superb story, and Jason Fry always tells an incredible story. But like the whole story is involved. Like this one is one of the longer ones, I think, but it was so well told. Sim Alu is a creepy person. Um, and his death on the Death Star is completely deserved. Like this provides so much characterization to him, and I was looking on Wikipedia, and actually, um, there's like a lot of details on like that he was like helping collect like Sith artifacts, and Cassian Andor and K2SO actually worked to retrieve artifacts from the Alu family. So just makes me want to read more into him. This story does. So
Yes, very, very good indeed. The next story was should have been on my honorable mentions, but it did not make the cut when I was making my list. But it's The Light That Falls. This takes place on Dagobah. Um, Another one of those random creature stories in these books. This actually is the creature that you see in uh uh The Empire Strikes Back
yeah,
that takes down the X-wing and pulls R2D2
yep,
into the swamp. This is the exact same creature.
Yeah,
He calls himself Bright Eyes because Yoda at one point called him Bright Eyes, which I
yeah.
think is really cool.
Yeah, Akimi Dawn Bowman wrote this story, and, I really enjoyed this one. Um, Getting to know Bright Eyes was great. They're a dragon snake. And it's just an overall reminder that beings around us may not be sentient in like the complete way of humans. Especially in the Star Wars galaxy, like there's a lot of times, oh, that creature's not sentient, but like, they still have a brain kind of
Yeah.
thing. And like they recognize everything that's going around. They have all these thoughts and processes to go through. And her learning about Dagobah and waiting and watching was all articulated very well, especially like there at the end. Um, just not one of my tops, but it's definitely like a really good story.
Well, I just love the idea that like this again shows you that everything is connected to the Force because one of the strongest stories within Dagobah was when Luke went on his like Force journey vision in the
Mhm.
cave and saw Darth Vader, and when he struck him down he saw himself, and that was like
Yeah.
so metaphorical, and like everybody like blew their minds when they saw it. But like Bright Eyes could feel that darkness. The
Mhm.
entire planet could feel that darkness. And like the really cool thing, which is actually really, really sad, is when Yoda died, there was an imbalance on the planet. Like
Yeah.
Yoda was literally the the last light on that planet, the last candle
Yep.
burning on that planet. And Bright Eyes says, like it's like the entire planet kind of went into chaos within balance once he died.
Yep.
Um, but seeing the world in her eyes, I thought was really, really cool. Um, you know, being very aware of Luke, being very aware of Yoda, um, and the way that like, the dark side of the force kind of gets the birds on edge, and that means that she kind of has to skip out on dinner because if she can't reach the birds, then she can't eat. So it was a very, very cool kind of like ecosystem story within Dagobah for sure.
Yeah. The next story is actually takes the name of From a Certain Point of View and just kind of works on it. But it's by Alex Jennings, From a Certain Point of View, and it is about Obi-Wan Kenobi. For me, I was jumping up and down after reading this story. I was so excited. Jennings like articulated this story so well and told the story of Obi-Wan struggling with all the decisions he's ever made in his life. Um it's got all of the show connections, all of like the Clone Wars connections, and like even goes back to Brotherhood. And like it's just I literally wrote in my notes chef's kiss. But my favorite part is ultimately Obi-Wan realizing that Anakin's not truly gone because he lives on in Luke and Leia. Those best parts of Anakin live on in his kids. And that's so important for Obi-Wan to actually realize so that he can have some peace and come to terms with everything.
Yes, for sure. I think that this story, I love this story because it shows even in death how much weight is on Obi-Wan's shoulders. Like you said, for every decision he has made from when we were introduced to the character until now. Um he has this conversation with Luke, and I said this in our review that everybody can listen to if they go search it in our feed.
Yes.
That there's this conversation that he immediately has, of course, after Yoda dies, and when he tells Luke that he has to fight Vader, Luke says, "I can't kill my father," and this blows Obi-Wan's mind. Um, Not because he's refusing to fight Vader, because after everything Vader has done, Luke is still seeing it as his father,
Yep.
instead of the enemy. And again, it points back to the idea that goodness came from both Padme and Anakin. Anakin loved more than anybody. He like
Yeah.
that was the whole reason why he unfortunately fell to the dark side was because of love. And seeing that here, like Obi-Wan is able to say, like, oh, like it's been staring in front of me the entire time. I'm such an idiot. And I just love how much this story is a full circle moment for him. Um, you know, when it comes to everything else, the only time we see or hear from Obi-Wan after this movie is Obi-Wan's Force Ghost talking to Rey. We don't get anything else from Obi-Wan other than just him smiling at Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi. Like
Yeah.
we don't get to see a conversation between the two. Well, at least not until
Um,
this book.
yes. Until this book. Um, I think the Heir to the Jedi book has him in it. I think.
Is
I
it
have not
canon?
read, yes,
Okay.
I have not read said book, but I think I remember people talking that their last conversation was in that book.
Okay.
So,
Well, I will definitely would like to read that because I want to see the full like closure endpoint for Obi-Wan for sure.
mhm. the I think this is the last story. Yeah, the last story we're going to talk about today is not my favorite because my favorite's down at the bottom, but it is called No Contingency by Fran Wild, and it is about Mon Mothma. This story, y'all, Mon Mothma is freaking badass. Like, just to see her actually take on action and like get to do something on her own. Fran Wild did an incredible job with this book. Or this short story, not this book.
Yes.
I need to go find more of her books. But
I
like, I love this.
we gushed about this story in our review, and there's a reason for it. One of the things that I had said was Mon Mothma is pin and proper and
Mhm.
political, and she always wears white. She's pure. She doesn't get her hands dirty, and this throws all of that away. And it says, "Hey, I got us into this mess. I'm gonna get us out of this mess." And I think that is so cool for somebody like Mon Mothma because it's coming from somebody you would not expect that to happen. This whole
Yeah.
idea of okay, I sent this droid to get information, and this information had come from one of our own that did or did not make it, but I do know that the droid is on its way, and we have to get that information because it is clinical for us to get this information to stop the empire. And they find out, well, there's a giant asteroid field, and that droid may not make it. And it dawns on Mon Mothma, uh-oh, I fucked up. I kind of set this contingency plan that if nobody gets to the droid within a certain amount of time, it implodes. And if the asteroid field is going to delay that droid from getting here, he's going to implode for no freaking reason. I need to
Yeah.
go find him, get the information so we can get one step further from stopping the empire. And everybody's no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You're Mon Mothma. You can't do that. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And she says, F all of you guys. I need to do it. I'm the only one with the codes. I'm the only one with the location. I'm going to go do this.
Yeah.
And I love that she steps up and does that. It is so cool.
And she's going for the information from the Bethans that she talks about in the briefing uh on Home One, which is just so cool. And like she gets to see blood on the information, and that just like kind of puts even more context into that briefing where she just kind of pauses and is like, many Bethans died to get us this information. Like,
Mhm.
it just had such an impact. Like, well done, Fran Wild. Well done.
Yes, I absolutely love this. And when I say she gets her hands dirty, she throws down with a droid. Like she stabs it right in the face. Like she does badass stuff.
Yes.
So it's not just her
Yes.
flying a ship, getting a droid, and it comes to save. No, she like at one point she has a bomb in her hand. Like it is intense. So don't just let us hype up the story to like make you feel like we're letting you down. No, it does get intense, and she is a pretty big badass in this story.
Yep. All right, so that brings to the close book club, but we also forgot to talk about what we were rating the Ahsoka episode. Mm.
Oh, this episode, like I said, it was one of the highlights of the three. Very big action piece. I really enjoyed it. Helped the characters that we are following be more connected. I would give this a solid 8 out of 10.
Yep. Same here. That was what I gave it as well. So for me, I thought it was a pretty good episode. I do have issues with it. I'd probably give it like an 8.5 now that Clay and I have kind of talked about it and I resolved some of my issues with the episode. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And next week we'll talk about how Star Wars fans can be really fucking ungrateful. That'll be a topic next week because it's taken Twitter by storm. And my sister even asked some questions about like retcons and stuff.
Hmm.
And so I just think we need to talk about it some more, especially with like how good these episodes are. So yeah, but Clay,
Oh
tell us where
man.
they can find you.
Of course, you can always find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, any and all social media at Fanboy Clay. Go check me out there. Of course, I am the host of the other show on this network called Ranger Alliance. We had a new episode this week. Go check that out with me and Joe. If you are a patron, me and Jake are planning our monthly recording for our Marvel Snap show. So go check those out and be prepared for a hefty episode at the end of this week for that. But if you don't like Power Rangers and for some reason you're listening to this, but don't like Star Wars for some odd reason, why are you listening to this? Go check out the show that's not on the network, which is Batman News Weekly, where me and my co host talk anything and everything Batman within pop culture. Katie, where can I
Yes.
find you?
Well, and first things first, Clay and I have to get a recording set up because we're going to be talking about Percy Jackson. And we're going to be reviewing those books. We're going to be going
Oh
to the movie
yeah.
so that we can be prepared for the show dropping in December. So keep an eye on that because Clay and I have got to talk about this. I need somebody to talk Percy Jackson with.
I
Okay.
I I need to reread the book. Oh man, how long is that book actually?
It's
So I
really not
can
that long because it's young adult.
it is a young adult. I think it's fairly short. It is a whopping 10 hours. That's easy.
Yeah. So we'll figure that out, but expect that. The next solo Patreon I plan on doing is talking about some things because I am going to get Patreon done. I promise y'all. I promise. I know I keep saying that, but it's going to happen. The next thing I plan on talking about is 5 things that I am hoping for in Murtagh, and which is the next book in the Aragon series by Christopher Paolini. Um, so that is what you can expect next from me. If y'all are interested in like a little synopsis about where Murtagh has been at, I can also totally do that because I have um all the audiobooks so I can listen to them and then kind of write stuff down. But I'm really excited for that book to come out. Um I just took off 2 days in November, Clay,
I
because
saw
we
that.
have we have The Eye of Darkness, Murtagh, and Iron Flame, which is the Fourth Wing uh sequel, that are all dropping on the same exact day. And I have to get all of these read. Like not optional. And I know we'll probably get Eye of Darkness like early, but just in case. I like to plan in advance. Um, so to answer Clay's question, you can find me on most social media platforms. It's at Slice of Katie. This show you can find on Twitter. It's at Star Wars Alliance of the A in the Wars. Very important. Don't forget it. Um, as always, you can email us starwarsalliance@gmail.com. Remember, there's no A in the wars. Do not forget it. Um, you can also shoot us a text. I know we haven't had the banner up all show, but that is 830-538-4828. Remember, you can text us, leave us a voicemail, voice memo, um, on the phone just to kind of give us reactions to Ahsoka. If you want to send us some thoughts on from a certain point of view returns, feel free to. We love hearing from you guys. It's super important. So yeah. I think this brings us to a close, Clay.
Yes, it
Next
does.
next week we're talking Ahsoka episode 4, and then what I told you guys about how I got really fiery about retcons and stuff. Um, and ungrateful fans. So that's what you can expect next week. If you have any questions about the show, Ahsoka, like if you're like, what the heck is this? Like, can you go into more information on that? Just let us know. Again, text us, email, send us a DM on Twitter. We're more than happy to dive into more details. So for now, guys, I want to wish everyone a great day or night, whatever time of day you are listening or watching, and we will see y'all next time. May the force be with you.